Welcome to Leadership Actually. It's not love,
No.
it's leadership. This is a podcast that is the messy class to make leaders' lives that little bit better. Welcome, Lisa Powney.
Welcome, Lee Rogers. You caught me off guard then. I didn't know we were starting.
But come on, we've got to go. You've got other stuff to go on to.
We were practicing.
We're not practicing. This
No.
is not a practice.
No, it's not. It's a bit messy, as always.
And that's okay.
Yeah. How the devil are you? I am going to say it this
You're
time.
back to that. I
Back
love
to
that. I'm pucker.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Pucker pie. What's going on?
You know what? I am humbled to have these conversations with some incredible people that span the whole spectrum of leadership, and I never take it for granted.
No, definitely.
You know, as a working class lad from Sale, not in a million years did I think I'd have the possibility to do this, and it's just a joy. You know, you talk about joy a lot. This gives me joy.
It gives me joy. I'm not going to do it if it isn't, to be fair. That's what we say, don't we? The moment it's no longer joyful, we don't want to do it. So, yeah, I'm glad it gives you joy.
Yeah, it does. And that's why I was up at 2:00 editing until last night and putting it on, putting it all together with the help of our brilliant producer Megs. But it was.
Yeah.
That's the behind the scenes messy bit.
That's it. A bit of dedication, definitely.
We try.
Yeah, definitely.
How are you?
I'm really well, thanks, Lee. I'm really well. I've been doing a bit more meditation this week.
Is that breathing thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Not Tai Chi this week.
Oh no!
I've been
What's your Qigong?
Qigong.
Is that right?
No, it's Qigong.
Oh, Qigong. Sorry.
And Tai
Apologies.
Chi.
Okay.
Yeah. I do that on a Tuesday, but I've been doing a lot more meditation, and I'm really happy about that because I am a meditation teacher, and I haven't been doing enough of it. I do some for myself, but I've been doing it for other people, and that really gives me joy because I see the real benefits that it brings.
Now,
So-
I'm going to give you a bit of credit now, and I
Yeah.
don't often do this yet because before Christmas, you did a session with us at Co-Creation,
Yeah.
and you made us pause and stop as part of the strategy day in meditation. And it was, I don't know, about 5 minutes, but it's the first time I'd stopped in a long time, and it had such an impact. It felt like half an hour. It felt such a joy, so it was amazing.
Thank you. It's good because sometimes you can be, we talk about it a lot, don't you? Really busy and, condition a bit. And I like to be busy and doing all those things, but it's really important to have the balance. And, we have this amazing ability within ourselves, the power of our breath, which can change everything. In a moment it can change direction. So I've been using that with some clients, and actually I was only recording a meditation, and Freddie was hearing in the background. He was like, "Mummy, I love that. That's good." And then within 5 minutes, he went to sleep. I don't know if he was bored. No, he loves the meditation. So I think it's really important that we embrace the pause, especially at this time of year, but every time. But thanks, Lee. We'll do more. Maybe we'll do a meditation pod.
Whoa.
The pod.
That's wild. Okay, let's introduce our phenomenal guest today. And I say I'm always excited about these conversations. I am genuinely excited about these conversations.
Absolutely.
Over to you, Lisa.
I'm going to do your official intro, Gillian, but welcome. Well, I am really excited as well.
I'm a bit nervous now. I'm just me. It's lovely to be here.
You are,
and I'm looking forward to a joyful time together.
Definitely. You've heard us rambling on.
Absolutely.
And we'll definitely try, and we hope that as well. We really want our guests to enjoy being part of it.
Sounds good.
And we know that it's you. You are very human. But I am going to give you your official title, and then we'll dive into some messy moments, if that's all right.
Thank you.
So you are a former senior leader at IKEA, who's led in the UK, Ireland, China, and globally. But these days, you are a coach, a non-exec, a trustee, and you use your voice and experience to help shape more inclusive and human-centered futures.
Wow.
Does that sum you up?
That's a really interesting description of me, but probably quite true in terms of who I was and what I've done,
Yes.
and the world that I am currently exploring.
Lovely. Yeah, I love that you're exploring that. But that's kind of the official, and you probably don't describe yourself in that. So without those results and, you know, people asking for reports, if somebody was to ask you who you are and you said, I'm just me, what might you say?
I think this is a really interesting question, and one that I've been working with quite a bit, because having had a corporate life, you're ops and working for one organisation, you often become described by what you do rather than who you are. And I really have spent the last few years trying to really unravel between that and actually who is me. I think when you meet, I love people.
Yeah.
I'm hugely curious about people, their backgrounds, what they think, where they are, and for me that doesn't matter. It's just people I meet on a daily basis. So I think I come with that sort of curiosity around people and their lives, and because people are so important to me, then I approach it very much with curiosity, I think. I like fun, I like laughter, and I like joy. So, you know, lots of people will say they often hear me before they see me.
I love
I'm
that.
rather loud, but it's often related to the fact that there's a giggle and a laugh in there. So I think that's what you get from me. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm a mum of 3.
Yeah.
And that means that a big part of my life is being there for my family and doing things together with my family. And I like to be a part of different communities. And I think when I go into those things now, I don't need to lead anything. I just want to be part of something.
Yeah, nice. That is a really nice description. All the things that are really grounded and human about you. And I love the fact that we can hear you before we see you. People would say the same about probably both of us, to be fair. So we love that. And before we dive a little bit more into probably your career, and then we'll bring it up to date, we like to start with the messy moments, because that's where we started and where we might have fallen over.
Yeah.
So I want you to, if you can you think of any, you know, throughout your career, so maybe a moment that probably didn't go to plan or as you expected, or made you laugh, or and what might you have learned from it?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this, because there are probably many, you know, I'm getting on a bit, and there are a few moments. But one came to mind actually this morning when I was thinking about the question a bit, and that was that obviously I'd worked when I joined IKEA, I worked in the UK for a long time. Then I took some time out, and then I ended up in Hong Kong. And I went to work for IKEA, which was operated as a franchise by one of the trading companies, actually, Jardine Matheson. On one of the first days, as my role as commercial manager, because that's what I was at that moment in time, I was doing a store walk. And which is what you do. You spend a lot of time on the shop floor with the team, going through and sort of looking at it commercially or from a customer perspective. And I remember being in this tiny, tiny little store in Kowloon, and we started to walk the floor. And I was just being me, and I was chatting about, you know, things that I felt, you know, we could do differently, or we could improve that meeting with the customer, or, you know, or were we focusing on the right things in order that it would drive, you know, commercial growth. And I wandered around, and there must have been about 10 or 12 things that we'd sort of highlighted during the store walk. I got to the end of the walk and somebody said, "We've done all of those things." I was like, what? Because I'd never come across that feeling of, you give it, you know, you're having a conversation and the impact that you can have, because I never had the intention that those 10 or 12 things would go into action and that action would be taken. And I think it was a bit of a like, oh my goodness, is this because of the role that I hold today? And I hadn't, you know, that sort of horrible hierarchy word, which is something that's not that doesn't sit nicely with me, but realizing the impact you can have if you don't understand the context you're in. And it made me giggle, and then I suppose I could have taken it as like, great, I can get loads done.
That's my list.
But it didn't. It made me think, okay, so what sits behind that, and why were people prepared to go and do that? and actually how would I approach it differently? Because I think I've always been one that you do something because you believe in it, not because somebody tells you to do it.
Oh, nice.
And that was probably one of my messy moments that made me giggle first before I reflected on it.
Wow, some might not say that was messy, but I love the fact that how you've reflected on it, that said, actually, respectfully, how could I do this different? Because it didn't really land in the way I believe or your values. So, yeah, I love that. And very funny, too, that they did it.
Can I just ask a fun thing? Because it just popped in my head. How many miles do you reckon that you've done on those
Walking
floor
stores, yeah.
Because if it's anything like me and the one in Warrington, literally, I think if I had my pedometer, that's probably my most walking I've ever done.
No, but we used to, when I was working in Beijing, actually, it was one of the biggest stores in the global portfolio, and we did used to wear pedometers, and we walked thousands and thousands of steps a day. But I think for me, that was probably something that is where everything takes place.
Yeah.
It's, you know, you can discuss whatever you like strategically. You can have the best commercial plans, but if it doesn't translate into that store environment and that meeting with the customer, then forget it, it doesn't work. So being on the shop floor and being with customers and what we used to call co-workers, which are the frontline staff, that was really where you knew whether things were going to work or not. But we spent a lot of time wandering around. Yeah.
Do you know what? Well, I'm going to explore that. You know, what was so important? I know you just kind of give us a bit of hints, but why was that so important to walk the floor? I think we try and encourage a lot of that now with our leadership population that says, have you actually walked and understood what's going on? But why was that so important in IKEA?
I think for me, because it's the reality, and you know, organisations get extremely big, and there are many conversations in executive board rooms or management meetings where their perception of the way the organisation works and how things are happening that can be very, very far away from the reality of a big organisation where, you know, even just when I was in the UK, we had 20 plus stores. So I think for me it was always, how could you work strategically, work by bringing people together around common goals, but then being out in the organisation and saying, is this showing up, and does this show up for the people that are working 20 hours a week, maybe on the checkout line? Do they get it in the same way? Yeah. Because actually, they're the people that meet the customers. Are we enabling them to do their job? So I think as a senior leader for me, it was both strategic and that ability to be out in the business and really connect with people. And then you could check how the messaging had landed.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I think when you're in a boardroom or you're in a management meeting, you have time and you'll have many, many hours talking about a conversation around values or direction or those sorts of things. And sometimes when you've got to take that into an organisation where people need to be on the shop floor, they maybe get 20 minutes rather than 20 hours of
Absolutely.
conversation. And does it translate? So that's why it was so important to me.
Great. I think there's lots of lessons that we can learn from that, Gillian. And I guess lots of people ask you about being in IKEA, and we will get to that. But what is your backstory? How did you plotted
How do I
history?
ended up there? Oh my
did you
goodness,
end up
this
there?
is very long, Lisa. How long have you got? No,
We'll settle in.
So I'll settle in. So you know what? My background was, you know, both my parents were teachers. And were both working, or my dad was working in education when I was of training teachers when I was a child. So instead of going into a school environment that was highly academic, my dad was a true believer in the comprehensive system. And really believed that you needed to be an environment where you were meeting very many different people from very different backgrounds and finding yourself in that in order to lead yourself. So I'd had a very sheltered childhood up until the age of 11, you know, in a primary school of maximum 100 children.
Yes.
And then I went to a purpose-built comprehensive school in Kirby, which is part of Knowsley, which, if you know Liverpool, it's probably one of the most deprived areas in the UK. but I entered a school of 2,000 children.
What a difference.
And I needed to find myself.
Yeah.
And I met many different people from many different walks of life with very different backgrounds to mine. And I think maybe academically it wasn't the best experience for me, but it certainly gave me that ability to relate to people and to understand people from different backgrounds, and also to understand that it's about the individual, not necessarily the context in which you find them. So I think I took that from it. So I then went through school, didn't do so well,
Yeah.
and at 18 decided I was going to work. And much to my parents' sort of dismay, because I think my dad desperately wanted me to stay in education, and because that's what they knew.
Yeah.
So I took a management trainee role in Liverpool with what was Lewis's department store group. So I was just 18.
Wow.
And I spent I joined in the September, and I was on the toy department at Christmas. And I was having to manage, I suppose, others that were temporary staff with very little experience. But I think that was where I started to really get a feel for, I loved customers, I loved products, I liked that whole retail environment. But I think what I really enjoyed was I liked working with others towards something.
Yes.
So I started my retail career, though for about 3 months my dad dropped me off every day and said, well, you can always go back to school if you want to. And probably part of me went, no, I'm not going back to school, not at this point.
No.
So I started my retail career working then in Lewis's in Liverpool, and then coming actually over to Manchester and working in Lewis's in Manchester, which of course now is the big Primark building.
Oh, yeah.
Where I worked then on the shop floor and also in the buying office, specifically in home furnishings, and I love home furnishings products. I'm one of those people that if you go out to dinner or you go somewhere to eat and there's really attractive tableware on the table,
Yeah.
I lift it up to see where it was made, because I just love anything that's tactile and understanding where it's from. So that was the start of my retail career. I did go back to school part-time, in the sense that I did a BTEC, which gave me the equivalent of 2 A-levels, but I just did it at my own speed, I think. So that was the beginning of my, I suppose, my career. I think the other thing that was probably really significant to me was that I played a lot of music as a child, which meant I was very much a part of bands and orchestra. I hated practicing on my own, and I played the piano as well, and I never ever used to do my practice unless somebody stood over me. But I really, really enjoyed being a part of something with others.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably where that was so important to me in terms of music and playing in orchestras and bands. But that was something then important to me in later life, of being a part of a team and being with others. Yeah. So that's a little bit about my background.
Yeah, nice. So what led you into the role in IKEA? How did that happen?
So I think, I'd arrived in Manchester. I was living like a student. I met my future husband, and who was a student.
Yes.
So I was doing a lot of partying and having to go to work on a Saturday morning with very little sleep. I was working for a traditional retailer where I was working 3 weekends out of 4. Which didn't really work. You know, I got 1 Saturday off very occasionally. Having missed the Smiths and New Order, which Simon will tell me regularly I missed, I thought, you know what, I'm not sure I want to work every weekend for the rest of my life. I think I was also, I couldn't probably articulate it, but I really didn't like the hierarchy. And that position led you to get additional benefits and ways of being. And although I learned so much about basic retailing working for a department store group, it was the hierarchy bit I really struggled with.
Yes.
You know, the fact that at each level of management, there was a dining room for managers.
Yes, there used to
You
be
know,
in the day.
so so once you've been a
thing?
not in the old days, it was.
Yeah, it used to be a
So,
thing.
an assistant manager, there would be a dining room for assistant managers, and there would be a dining room for managers and a dining room for senior managers. And this just didn't fit with my value system, but I probably couldn't articulate it at that point. So didn't like that hierarchical environment.
Yes.
And that actually then it was also quite a top-down approach to leadership. And I'd had one incident very early on in my IKEA career, at Lewis's, where I was learning to stock take. Really
Yes.
important thing to do. And my department manager at the time said, you need to learn to stock take, and I'd like you to do this, this, and this. And I asked why. Because unless I understand why you do something, then I'm not very good at connecting myself to it. Yeah? And I asked why, and she turned around to me and she said, it's not your role to ask why, it's your role to do. I think that was probably one of the biggest lessons I learned, where I just thought, I'm not sure this is for me. So I started to think, well, what could life look like outside of Lewis's? Still in retail,
Yes.
still with customers, still with products. And I started to look for another job. And one day I saw an advert they were recruiting for the store in Warrington, which of course was their first store in the UK.
Yeah.
I didn't know much about them. And I thought, well, I'll just go along and see. And I went along for an interview. And I had an interview in a porter cabin on the building site of IKEA in Warrington.
So you still didn't know much more.
So I still didn't know much about them. I knew they were global. I knew that was important to me because I like travel.
Yes.
So these were some of my motivations. And I knew they sold home furnishings,
Yeah.
which I liked. And I just went along to the interview, and they talked a lot about the vision, it's a purpose-led organisation. It has a vision. It has a strong business idea. But what I liked actually is they talked a little bit about their shared values, and I felt a connection to that as an individual. But what clinched me was the fact that when they offered me the job, they said the first 6 weeks of your employment, you will be in Amsterdam doing your basic training. And I thought, do you know what? Well, that's great, because, I get to go and live in Amsterdam for 6 weeks. If it doesn't work out, I'll find another job. So it was very fickle at that moment in time.
To travel.
I got to travel. So then I joined them. And when I look back now, it was a bit bonkers. They gave me a job title, which was Group Leader Soccer et Ting.
What?
So I'd gone from this very structured, hierarchical, you are a department manager and now you can wear your own suit rather than wearing a suit, wearing a uniform, to wearing a red T-shirt at that time, not a yellow T-shirt, wearing a uniform and being a group leader. I said, it's like something out of the Scouts. But actually what it translated into was I was a department manager, and soccer et ting is actually bits and pieces. I think it was the best title ever, wasn't it?
Group leader of bits and pieces. That is a dream job.
There must have been something that made me go, because regardless of that being a bit bonkers and the fact that, you're handed a plane ticket on the first day of employment and told somebody will pick you up in the Netherlands at Amsterdam Airport, I suppose that's also where I am a bit adventurous and a bit courageous and a bit of like, well, do you know what, you give it a go.
Yeah.
And so, I went and joined IKEA, and I suppose the rest is history.
And what was it like? What was it like working for them?
So I think, the first 6 weeks were incredible, because I sort of landed in a store in Amsterdam, not speaking Dutch, wandering around with a little badge in Dutch saying in training in Dutch, and then being on the shop floor. And if a customer approached me, of course, as soon as I opened my mouth, they just switched to English, because of course that's how it works.
Yeah.
But very, very quickly, I started to understand, and I think there was, and I probably describe it now, is that when they were onboarding you,
Yes.
and they were really demonstrating who IKEA was and how they operate, all the leaders were it was very much about stewardship. Their responsibility was to bring you on board, secure that you had an understanding of, you know, that why we existed, which was to create a better life for the many people. We do it through home furnishings, and that means your job is to sell home furnishings and home furnishing ideas to the people that come through your doors. Quite a simple idea.
It is.
So it was very, very much that they saw it as an opportunity to pass it on to more and new IKEA people that would then pass it on to others. So it was very much that stewardship, I think, in terms of passing it on, allowing you to make it your own, which is what we needed to do in the UK, because we weren't IKEA in the Netherlands, we were going to be IKEA in the UK. And I think that became something very early on. And I was super fortunate, you know, we came back to the UK, we worked with a lot of people who were what IKEA would term as ambassadors. So their job was to go into countries and expand. And that meant opening stores, but also developing people. And I was very fortunate at that point. And I think I learned very early on that actually the best way to get the best out of something or people is to connect people to what they do. And then allow them to interpret it, connect to the why, and actually do what they can do at their best. And it was an interesting time. It was really funny at times, you know. I remember we were in Warrington and we were laying out one of the departments, and I was still working in feet and inches, and the person I was working with was working in centimetres. So we were measuring, but we were measuring in a very different way. So you had all these quirky cultural things that came through that you didn't think about. And I think that was that sort of working with a very traditional, a very Scandinavian company, which was glowing global, but every market it went into, it came up against these sort of the local part of it and the Scandinavian part, and it just made you giggle all the time, along with those funny job titles.
Bits and pieces.
You've just reminded me, one of my best mates at high school worked in IKEA.
Oh, really?
Yeah, during, I think, just as he was finishing or whatever.
Yeah.
And he loved it, actually. He absolutely loved it.
Yeah. It's really funny, you know, because there's an awful lot of people that end up doing their Saturday job or their weekend job and then staying. And I think it's an organisation where people are given the opportunity to grow, and if there is that connection to the what and the why and the shared set of values, there is a real belief in people, and people are given opportunities. And, you know, I think that when I look at my own career, I started as a first-line manager on the shop floor.
Yeah.
And I never, you know, I didn't have in my head I would end up doing what I did. But it was always an environment where people were given the opportunity to grow and develop and take on things. You had to be a bit courageous because not everybody wanted to get on a flight and go somewhere across the world.
No.
But the environment was available for you.
And we talk a lot about purpose-led. That's what drew you in, and you said that ability to connect people to the purpose. How do you do that, Gillian? A lot of leaders will ask that, you know, how do I get people connected to what we need to achieve?
Yeah.
What is the key?
I don't, you know, for me it's about time and effort. I mean, because I have this real belief in people, and I really believe that everybody has the capability and the resources in the right environment. And I'm also very much is that whatever I've been fortunate to have, I would also like to share with others. Nice. So I think for me, you know, it wasn't something where the light came on immediately. It was probably something I learned over time, the importance of connecting myself and then investing in others to connect them to what was important.
Yes.
Because what I saw really of how powerful that is when somebody feels connected and motivated to do something for themselves that is good for an organisation and its profit, but also good for them themselves. And I think that's what I learned very early on. So I think I'd had that a little bit when I was in the UK. And then I left the UK, had some time in Hong Kong. But I think where I really got it the most was I went to mainland China in 2002.
Wow.
And we were opening stores. And if you're opening stores, it can be a bit technical and it can take a lot longer sometimes than you want. And we were a new country, which meant we didn't have an establishment team. We needed to develop the establishment team to build stores in the future.
Yes.
So I had a very strange job where I was the store manager, but the project manager as well. So I was dealing with the construction manager and all the Chinese government, and I had about 1,200 people in a 30-metre pit, because we had 3 levels of underground parking going on in one part. But then I had to build a team in order to be able to operate this store in the future. And I think I had a fantastic job that a boss at the time who just said, take the time. Really think about what is the role of the store connected to its contribution to China and IKEA in China, but then to global IKEA. And so we were really able to, during that time, I was able to really explore that. So we did an exercise where we really thought about, well, as this big store in China, what's our contribution? Not only just to IKEA, but to the community we would serve, and also societal. What did that mean then for IKEA in China as they grew as a business? But also how we were going to actually influence the global organisation, because it was, we were establishing ourselves, IKEA was establishing in Asia. So I learned very early on the importance of that purpose, that when I took on a leadership team, they were from a very different culture, very different backgrounds. How do you come together around something?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you talk about what does it mean? What does life at home mean for you? What does home furnishing mean for you? How do you then take IKEA's shared set of values? How do you take it into a different culture and get into, well, what does togetherness mean for you? Because togetherness for me meant bringing together loads of different perspectives, lots of different expertise, and then being able to find something that actually created a really good solution in order to have a better meeting with the customer, if I use it in that sort of context, or commercial growth. Togetherness in China means something completely different unless you have a conversation, because it means harmony. So I think I learned very early on that, you can have a set of values and shared, but if you don't understand the behaviours and the meaning behind it, then it could mean something completely different to somebody else. So I think it was very much really connecting people to the purpose, to the business idea. And during that time as well, it was very clear that I was working with people who didn't see IKEA being for them. It was for very affluent Chinese or for Westerners. So how did you then connect them to what we did, connect them to the values, in order that they could then say, okay, I now know with my role what's the right thing to do. So I had a very fortunate period of time where I was able to do that, and I think that informed me a bit about how I led going forward.
Amazing. That real purposeful connection is such a commonality, isn't it, and a drive, especially when there's so many cultures that you have to navigate, and you need to bring people
and if
forward.
I look back, I think it's a big part of what allows IKEA to be who they are globally, because I think so many organisations don't have that, and if you're not purposeful, if you don't have a clear point of view and you don't have values, then it's sometimes quite difficult to navigate in other cultures. And as a global company, you need your own identity, but you need to be able to connect to be relevant and successful.
Absolutely.
You've used a phrase quite a lot. I learned really early on. right? And it springs to my mind about how open-minded you've been as a leader. You know, a few people on this podcast have talked about being lucky in certain phases, whether it's a boss or being given opportunity. I'm just curious about how much luck you've made for yourself in terms of your approach and taking people with you along on that journey.
I don't know. I think, I suppose, I don't know whether I'd call it bravery. I'm always, I like to try new things. So, you know, probably, and I'd be a bit courageous, I suppose, in that, and take things on. I think I never, and probably because I always like to be with others, then I've learned that actually, yeah, how do I bring people with me? I think I learned, because I don't like being alone in anything. And I think, so I have a very inclusive approach, and I think I have done from day one. And that sits in that I don't feel that because somebody gives me a title or a job that I'm any better than anybody else. I feel everybody has something to offer, and so I've probably been very conscious of that. And therefore, I'd like to achieve something with others rather than on my own. And that means that as a leader, how do I bring people with me? That's my job. My job isn't to be the smartest in the room. My job as a leader is to bring the best people together to create an environment of trust in order that people can be at their best. And I think that's probably what I was able to do from leading a very small, from having a small shop in a big shop to running a shop to running many shops, if I use it in that. It was always sat in, how do I focus on the development of people in order to develop the business? There's always luck involved, isn't there, I think. But I think you just have to be brave, and I think it sits perhaps in being as if I am who I am. You get what what you see is what you get. I was very fortunate to work in an environment where authenticity was allowed.
Yeah, nice.
Because I actually think when you can be yourself, you can be at your best. That, and you're not trying to be something else. So I think I was fortunate.
See, and I love that. I genuinely love that, and I totally agree with you. By the way, I go back to your Lewis days though, because what springs to my mind is actually you chose away from that environment because of how it made you feel, and it didn't sit. You said it didn't sit well with your values, and I can see a pattern where you've gone into something and given yourself and moved around the world because it absolutely does meet and allows you to be you.
Yes. And I think I was super fortunate. And it doesn't mean that it was all wonderful all of the time, but I think there was something that sat in. And it's not that I share all of the values, and it's I'm a clone, and I really am not a clone, I promise you. Even though I don't think I'm blue and yellow anymore if you cut me open, okay?
Have you said that? Have you said that at some point?
Yeah, and other people have said it to me. Yeah, aren't you just part of a cult? But it's the understanding that there is a set of shared values, understanding your own values, and then understanding where the connections are. And I think that for me is probably what I learned by living in other people's cultures. Probably in the UK I didn't see it so much, but when I moved from Lewis's, then I went to work for IKEA. Then I actually spent some time working for IKEA, but with another company that had a different culture. So it was those experiences of thinking, well, what's missing for me? And why doesn't this work? That when I got to China and landed and I went, whoa, this is a very different environment and a very different culture. Where do we start? And it wasn't just me. I'm a Brit with, values that probably go back to who I am and where I come from and my family and everything. But I was also working with a lot of other IKEA people, but they were French, they were American, they were Swedish, they were Danish. So what was common to us was this shared set of values. but you needed to understand what sat behind that. And I think that helped us when we went into somewhere like China, and also when I came back to the UK, to understand that actually you need to start with the people.
Yeah.
You need to start with that understanding in order to connect to people. And I saw this very, very clearly in my last role in the UK, where I came back into an organisation that was underperforming. And the global organisation was super frustrated with the UK. And they weren't performing well. The UK was saying, but IKEA doesn't work in the UK. And of course I stepped in, and what had happened was almost they were underperforming, they were losing market share, all of those sorts of things, but they were an outcome of the fact that they'd forgotten who they were and what made IKEA special, but also what was IKEA's UK's contribution. You know, that sort of, it wasn't, well, you need to be like Sweden, but actually what is it in the UK, and how do you bring the best of the UK together with the best of IKEA in order to be relevant in that market and for people to be able to contribute. And I don't think I would have seen that if I hadn't had the China experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everything that you've said is like people first, and you've been through massive amounts of change, and it's obviously served you really well to get underneath, you know, have some common purpose and really understand where people are at and meet them where they're at, and then lead through change from that. So what has taken you to now become a coach? Why has that become really important to you in your next chapter?
In my next chapter. So I think when I left corporate life, I was given one piece of advice: test and try, yeah? And that was actually from somebody I'd worked with. He said, just go out there and test and try stuff. So I thought I needed to do, you know, the traditional route of, you've been a CEO, then you need to go and do, and senior leaders, you should go and do some non-exec work, yeah? So I started to do the non-exec work. Yeah. And of course, being a board member is very different than being an operational CEO. And there are elements of it I really like, because I like the strategic piece and that sort of being responsible for the future of an organisation, and that's important to me. But what I really miss was people and being able to be close to people. And I think throughout my leadership, and if somebody is to say, is that I have a coaching style of leadership, and that was very much the capabilities that were required of us, that it wasn't enough just to be a manager. You have a huge responsibility to develop people. And if you ask me what was I most proud of during my time with IKEA, it was much more about the development of people, and the fact that I can look now into that organisation and see so many people that I had a part of their development who are now super senior leaders outside of China, across the world. And that makes me really proud. That's what I think, that makes life worth it. So I knew that this was a part of it, and I just thought I really enjoy developing others. And that could be a combination of coaching and mentoring. And I just thought, that's where I want to be, and that's the space I want to be in. But I really struggled because I don't have any formal qualifications, and I feel that in the world of coaching you need to have formal qualifications. So I was quite brutal and put myself through a coaching qualification. But you know what? At the time I was thinking, oh, why am I doing this at my time in life? But actually I think it helped me then to identify really that what's the difference between a coaching style, mentoring, and actually being a coach. Yes. And I think fundamentally, and I have in me that belief in others and that people are a whole, and that sometimes you just need to ask the right questions. You have to ask questions that stimulate thought. You're not being asked to solve it for somebody. And sometimes you just need to hold the conversation. And I think that's what I would naturally do, but I've learned how to do it. And this then gives you the opportunity to meet so many different people in so many different walks of life. And that takes me back to, I'm just nosy and curious, and I like to know how things are.
And I can see the smile on your face.
Yeah, so I think that's why it sort of fits with that. I get that opportunity to be in service of others, but they get the opportunity to grow and develop. And there is, that connection that if people are at the best, then they will deliver in many different ways.
Absolutely aligns with everything from your background that you bring through, and now other people can even more benefit from, your wealth of experience and, the amazing questions and connection that you bring. Do you know what? I feel like we've only scratched the surface. I haven't even looked at my questions.
Sorry,
and I
talk a lot as well, Lisa.
No,
I'm really
I love
sorry.
it. I love it. I think we need a number 2. We'll have a number 2 podcast. But there is, the big thing for me is that authenticity and, and that curiosity about people that you started in that world and, in that comprehensive school. And often quite a lot of CEOs might not have ever experienced that start in life as well. And you've used it for your benefit. And it clearly shines through. You're an absolutely lovely person to talk to and have conversations with, and we can learn a lot. So I've really enjoyed our conversation. I hope you have. Lee?
Just your humility. I've seen many a CEO, many a senior leader, many a senior director that are not connected to customers, that don't walk the floor, that don't develop people they say they do, but actually ego leads. And what is absolutely palpable with you is the joy you're in. You can feel it. I even go back to my best friend, or one of my best friends growing up, and he, everything you just spoke of, the organisation you led, and I think it was a similar time because it was around then. He got that experience in IKEA, and I was just reflecting then to say, actually, over the last 20 years, IKEA's been a massive part of my life, of our home.
Yeah.
Messing stuff up, actually. My wife's good at it. I'm rubbish at it.
It's been electrocuted 3 times.
but it's such a phenomenon.
Yeah.
What you've done and what you've achieved, but you started, I'm just me. And that's the bit that really warms me, and you're so gracious for your time. Really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, really appreciate it. When you finished at IKEA, how many stores had you opened?
So,
as a test?
oh crikey! I think how many stores did I opened? I opened a couple in them. So I had 3 in the UK that we opened. Then when I opened one in Beijing, but then I was part of opening others. So probably, I don't know, probably 10 I'd been part of. But they don't, they only have 350 stores. So actually to open a store, I remember somebody said to me, you do realise this is a big responsibility, because however that store is birthed, as we've used that terminology, it sits in the walls for the history of the organisation. And now I would always talk about, because it's multi-channel and omni-channel and all of those sorts of things. In the same way that we would walk the floor, you walk the web as well.
Nice.
As somebody responsible for it, you need to know what's going on in your website, on Instagram, and all of those sorts of things. And you need to be where your customers are. And without customers in a commercial environment, you are nobody.
I love that. One final question, and then we're done. What's the one person that we should have sat in the hot seat where you are now that you could help get us there?
Oh, crikey. Oh, gosh, I haven't thought about that one at all. Do you know what? I've been super fortunate since leaving IKEA to meet some people who I really feel are hugely influential in creating movement. And there's one person who's been really, really important to me because I do a lot of work with the Good Employment Charter. Nice. And he is the director of the Good Employment Charter, and that's Ian MacArthur. He's great at interviewing, and I've been on podcasts with him. But it's very rare that somebody interviews him about his leadership. And for me, he's somebody that has really led something in Greater Manchester.
Yes, he really has.
And I think you need to get him in the hot seat.
Yeah, definitely. He's the reason we met. So
well, we'll get on it.
Yeah.
We'll get on it. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Leadership Actually, and we can't wait to bring you the next episode. Please like, follow, subscribe, and stay with us on the journey. Thank you.